people have signed up, as you have probably already realized, slightly confusingly, but not actually. We have three kinds of participants here. We have people we call FITEX, who are mostly from the professional world, who have actually a study right. You are the majority here. Then we have Aalto students. This is an Aalto University course. You are surprisingly the minority here. So actually there's less university students than other people. And then we have you people who we call tourists, who we are super happy to have here. So for one reason or another, you're not taking the full course, but you are mostly super welcome to join and tell your friends about it, because this is an open lecture. We are recording, that's what it says there. I hope everybody's seeing the slides, hearing my sound and everything. Why are you here? What is this course about? Well, you can still sign off if this doesn't match your criteria. So pretty much this is a very basic, relatively short online course on changing and leadership, leading change. That's the word I was looking for. So ideally, we're looking at this for team leaders, change agents, organizational leaders, any professional who wants to change things in their organization. And it can be a small change, can be big, it can be huge societal change. I think we're going some of the basic blocks about change from our perspective, based on our expertise. This is not a comprehensive course on organizational change, but I hope this is a fundamental nevertheless. And change, it can be in a team, in a unit, in a whole company, in a work community. So this is pretty much the context that we're hoping you have signed up for. And the actual course objectives are here. So we're really hoping that we are able to change your thinking about when it comes to leadership, organizations, and facilitating change. That's the name of the course, isn't it? Now, facilitation plays a huge part here. So facilitation is kind of actually helping others, to put it simply. And one of the key things for Jari and myself here is that this is actually very practical. Yes, this is very theoretical, can be very academic as well, but I think at the end of the day, this is hands-on work, helping other people. Although it can be conceptually slightly abstract, but you'll see what we mean. But mainly this course is not about book knowledge. This is about doing stuff and learning through experience and doing. And few words about me. So my name is Risto. I'm here in Finland at Aalto University. I work as a university lecturer here. And but also as a university lecturer, I have done a lot of consulting and a lot of trainings for business people in my life. And when it comes to transformation, I feel kind of in my career, I have personally led 3 big transformations, or medium size. I've been a transformation coach or a consultant for many other changes. And then I have seen many projects at my ripe age and seeing kind of variety. On the right-hand side of the slide is that a few years ago, I was writing a couple of books and handbooks, definitely about organizational change and change agents and so forth. And then we have my dear colleague, Jari.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So I'm also working at Aalto University and in the Department of Industrial Engineering Management, and being around a while, being a senior lecturer. So maybe it's just having a gray hair and less hair than Risto that I've been appointed to be a senior one. And so my field is and keen interests have always been leadership, leader and leadership development, and maybe a little from critical perspective and I have been working pretty much in quite many contexts as a coach and developer as well, not just doing academic teaching or academic work, but also in working with real organizations and real leaders, to helping them to with change and leadership. But now we are giving this course now, is it 5th time or 6th time, or how many times we have been?
I think it was first online when COVID hit. So that was 6 years ago. So this is 7th.
7th? All right.
Yeah, if COVID was 2020. Yeah. 7th time. Yeah.
Great.
I hope you're not taking it for the 7th time, but yes. I mean, if any of you are, then you're happy. You're welcome.
And so we are sharing the stage here to help you, but Risto is having a little bit more time on air than me, but we are co-teaching this and trying to be helpful for you to in your journey with us. So thanks for
Absolutely.
coming and joining the course.
Yeah. And it's not actually us. We have two people in the background, key people who are kind of under the hood. And Jaakko, you already probably saw and met indirectly, who's actually here now online. You can see Jaakko if you have any
Hi, everyone.
thumbnails open. Thank you, Jaakko. And then the other course assistant is Katri, and they will be, and you have probably received emails from them. So they are, as you saw, you are 250 people pretty much. At least now we're almost 100 people. So there's a lot of coordination going in the background. So Jaakko and Katri are key people to make that happen. And the one and only place to keep things simple where you can reach us is by email from facilitating@aalto.fi. And we will be watching that email during work hours, not 24/7, but work hours. And we will. And like Jari said, we're here to help. The whole point of this course is to help you learn. So we are very helpful and even flexible sometimes. Okay, back to this content. So kind of the first part before the first group exercise is pretty much just setting your expectations of what is this course is about. I think that's super important, especially now that we're online and we're such a diverse group of people from all around the world. So first of all, it's less like this. Like I said, this course is not about book knowledge. It's not that we're like Jari and myself, we appreciate book knowledge, and that's really important. But this course is not about going through the classics or so forth. And the whole attitude towards this course is not like that the books have the answers and we are just testing whether you know the right answers. It's more like this. And here we have a football game over here on the right. It's like you are the experts. You are the people who have to go and do change, whether it's big or small. So we're trying to kind of give you the tools and the setup, but we really, really appreciate that at the end of the day, it is you who's going to play the game. And that's kind of the, how could I say, the kind of the perspective and the attitude of this whole course. It's, in a way, it's really about you and not about having the right answers or the right knowledge. And the second thing is, like Jari underlined, is that this course is very much hopefully changing your perspectives about leadership. What is leadership now in the decade of 2020s, now in the world of uncertainty, digital disruptions, and all of this? And a couple of things just to check the baseline that we don't think that leadership is something that how many people you report to. We kind of think that leadership is much more than that. It's not only a formal position. It's not limited to senior executives, if you will. And leadership is not about you, actually. It's not an individual skill. Leadership is a kind of teamwork as well. It's a social construct, pretty much. I think, Jari, you will be later talking about that. And leadership, therefore, is very much how do you relate to other people. So it's kind of collective activity. And then, of course, there's no single mold. What is a good leader? What is a leader in different contexts? There are many styles. There's many ways. And you need to kind of find, of course, many of you have a lot of experience with this, is that you probably agree, you need to find, what's my leadership in this context? What kind of a leader I want to be or I need to be and so forth. And it changes as you change. In this project, while you were young, this is the kind of leadership you did. But now, because it's a different context, you lead like this. So it's it's a changing thing. It's not a fixed thing, this leadership. So maybe a couple of, how should I say, basic fundamentals that in this course we fully believe in. And the other one is that we think kind of like, we hope this course is kind of like we're the personal trainers for your leadership. So, like I said, it's about you playing the game. So we don't have the right answers for you. But we do collectively, actually, with Jari, we have quite a lot of experience about teaching and doing leadership and facilitating people. So you're going to treat us like your personal trainers. We're not going to run the marathon for you, but we might have some couple of good points. How do you practice for that marathon and what you should take into account? Such as it is about you, leadership. You are the key in your own leadership, but you are in the middle of other people. So it's this kind of balance that it's about you, but leadership is collective activity. And then, our sparring questions are kind of like, what kind of leader are you in this group of people? Leadership is action. I think that came in the previous slide as well. It's not enough that you know things. You need to do leadership, and it changes as you do. Like I said, not just book knowledge. And you need the ability to act on that knowledge. It's pretty much the same thing said again. And just like in many sports, you need kind of a strong core. And if you have a strong core, you can do different things based on that strong core. So we're hoping that we're kind of giving you ideas that what does a good change leadership core muscles look like? What are the basics that if you have these core muscles in a good shape, then you can do a variety of leaderships and play the leadership game, whatever is thrown at you. And then last point, leadership is continuous maintenance. So it's not like you once learn the fundamentals of leadership and change, but you probably should come back and reflect about them and see how the world has changed. And the obvious example nowadays in the year 2026 is, of course, is AI. How is AI changing how we lead other people? And so it's kind of like going back to the basics and seeing how are they relevant now in this world that we live in. And third point is that this course is designed step by step. So each lecture is built on top of the next one. And the exercises are made such that, they build on top of the previous ones. And we're kind of hoping that by the last lecture, you can see that, okay, we were actually building this whole thing, this whole experience for you. And it makes sense. It's not like we're going to hide it. We're going to tell you every time what's the whole point of each lecture and each exercise. But once you have gone through the experience of doing those exercises, you might kind of get a different perspective. Now I see how they fit together. And we have the live online lectures as we speak. That's one of the key parts. We have the weekly pair exercises, not for the tourists, sorry, but for the FITEX and the Aalto students. And there you actually learn by doing. Those are the actions. Those are the small experiences based on what we taught here in the lectures. And then, of course, we do appreciate book knowledge. So at the end of each lecture, we have a couple of pointers that there's a whole new world into this, and there's a lot of literature into this, and kind of depending on your interest, where do you want to go? Good. Couple of still points before we let you further. Let me see, I'm looking at the time. Maybe few administrative things. So here's the kind of the lecture and the topics. We're now the first one out of 6 lectures. And actually you can see the last lecture is on 27th of May, although some information said that the course goes over to June, but this is the final information. We stop the last week of May. How do you pass the course? Well, this is relevant only to Aalto students and FITEC because tourists, you don't need to pass it. You're just here for fun. You need to attend every lecture. And if you miss a lecture, send us an email. We have a plan B for you. And you need to do all the exercises. Even if you miss an exercise, you still have to do it. So it's pretty simple. Every lecture, every exercise, and then you pass the course. Practicalities, we got attendance forms just to check that you actually attended every lecture. For FITEC participants, you can have fixed pairs for the Aalto students. And unless you want fixed pairs, we're going to match you and pair you up every week randomly. And the exercises we got, so like I said, the FITEC and Aalto students must do all the exercises. There's going to be 5 exercises altogether, and they're all pair exercises. And it works so that you get a pair from email, and then you contact each other. You agree on an online session, like 1 hour, and then you do the exercise together. And then you submit it to the Google form that we're going to provide you with a link. And people do actually like the exercises, so be open and positive about them. I'm sure you are. And the exercises, just to give you a teaser, we're going to first exercises by the end of today. They're actually very simple and actually very useful in practice. And they're all about the facilitation, quite a lot about the facilitation. and they only work when you do them in pairs. That's why we're forcing you to be in pairs. They only work because you're facilitating the other person. You can't do that alone. You cannot facilitate another person if you're doing it alone. Attendance, like I said, Aalto students, FITEC students must attend every lecture. If you miss one, send us email. Great. Attendance is recorded that we send you a link into this Zoom chat where you just go and in a Google form say that I was there. Few words about how to listen to these lectures. Like we said in the welcome email, whatever best works for you. Might be walking the dog like this picture, doing the laundry, cooking food for the family, I don't know, lying down in a sofa. Perfectly fine. Do you want to keep your video open or not? That's perfectly fine. Except when we do the exercises and we put you in small groups in a breakout room, then please, turn on the video so that other people see you and be in a situation where you can talk to other people and do the simple exercises that we do online. And like you said, we try to give you the timetable of each lecture in advance. And then one more slide about this kind of course administration. Here's your recipe for success. And of course, you get all the slides, so you can go back to these. If you miss a lecture, contact us. If you can't contact your pair for your weekly exercise, contact us. If you're not receiving our emails, then do contact us. Because if you are here and have not received our emails, then, there is a problem. So anyway, at the end of the day, just send us an email and we will fix the situation. Let's get as simple as that. And here we are. Introduction, as I'm speaking, soon we're going to put you in the breakout rooms where you can meet other people and talk about what are your motivations for this course. And then Jari is going to talk, then we're going to have a break in about 30 minutes. And then the second part of the lecture, and we stop at 6 o'clock finish time. One more thing before we ask you to go to breakout rooms. Just have fun. Make this, although we're online, make it into a good, safe learning space. I mean, enjoy, be free. You're not accountable for anything here, more or less. But of course, be mindful of others. Be yourself, be open to learning. I'm sure you are. That's why you are here. But just to remind you, make it a good learning space and an open space for yourself and for others as well. And these are the principles, and especially in the breakout rooms, enjoy the fact that there's random people put together and you can discuss things. Good. So next we're going to put you into breakout rooms. I guess Jaakko is more or less ready.
And you come back. And just put a chat your responses and notes you took in breakout rooms. But then we'll come back later to those. Or would you like to, Risto, say something about the motivation, what people are?
No, maybe later I'll have a look at the chats.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Let's. But hey, now next something like 15 minutes. It's time to take this kind of maybe more fundamental view when we talk about our how we be in organization, how we act, how we make sense out of those, and what's kind of taking a step back and how to scrutinize our lenses to interpret the organizational reality and social reality as well, and what are our expectations, what is it like, and how when we are in organization or in collaboration, there's a lot of data and information we are getting through experiences or perceptions, talking, there's pictures, emotions, interactions, and all that data we somehow interpret and make sense out of. And we can argue that we all have kind of unique lenses to interpret and make sense out of the data we acquire. And that's very, very fundamental stuff, what we are doing in social world, that we get data all the time through our senses, and we make sense quite automatically. We interpret what that information tell us, and we have unique kind of and personal lenses to make this interpretation, and it's inevitably a bit different than our peers and other persons have. And why is that? So our lenses to make interpretations, we have built those through our life history. So and why they differ from each other, so that we don't have exactly the same lenses to make these interpretations. It's that we have built different worldviews and view of reality, how we see what's the paradigm we are having when making our interpretations, and we might also have different view of human nature. Are other people trustworthy, or should we doubt that they have some hidden agendas and so on? So that's one thing. So then our personalities are different. So maybe that's also one thing that can build our lenses, or have built our lenses different. Our values and ideological views are different. That also make us to interpret the same information differently than some others. Our professional background, our education, tend to build our view. So and we are engineers, so we tend to have certain kind of lenses, and then when we are having some other education, then our lenses are different. Then cultural differences and social experiences and our backgrounds have built our lenses. Our personal experiences through the life history has also been important. Why how we perceive currently, what's important, how we see these things. But then there is also more, let's say, temporal or situational factors that might affect our interpretation. So different social contexts and situational factors tend to make us to interpret, and also in a way they make us act differently as well. And then sometimes when we are tired, or we are well resourced, then our interpretation about social and cultural stuff is different as well. So what is fact is about people is that we tend to, or we don't take things as such, but our mind interpret the data. And sometimes there are this kind of tendency that because we are in middle of our own way of seeing things, that we easily prone to presume that others perceive and experience the world and situations similar with us. And I catch myself all the time with this, that I think this is quite natural to think this way, but there are different ways of seeing and interpreting. And memorizing that is I think one thing when we talk about how we act as leaders, how we act as helpers in organizational change, or how we interpret. And so that's why it would be good to be more willing to ask and listen how others are perceiving and interpreting. And here in the picture, do we see a man or a woman, or both? Might be that we see differently. But we must have a kind of concept or theory of the phenomenon before the data we acquire can make sense to us. So, and here is this a illustration that my one of the colleagues tend to use, that what do we see in a picture? Do we just see the black dots in a white field and some patterns, or do we see something else? And maybe if we have a concept of a dog or a Dalmatian dog even, then we can distinguish it. Okay, there might be a dog in a picture. But if you don't have that concept, then it doesn't make sense. Or it just black dots in a white field, more or less. And that's tend to be the situation in the world in general as well. That some of us have much richer concepts, and that then the same data makes much richer sense to us than for someone else. So, for example, junior expert and senior expert can see things differently and interpret the same data and same information quite differently. And that's of course how we interpret the social situations and what's happening in organizations. So our lenses tend to be quite pivotal there, and we should become more aware of those, because it's also that we have quite a lot this kind of unconsciousness with our lenses that we don't question. But if we want to probe and develop our lenses, then we should be curious about those. Okay, but then if we need a concept, then when we talk about now about organizations, what is our concept or theory of an organization or organizational reality? And I think the very valid question is, when we talk about change or leading, so what would be the useful ways to understand organization and organizational reality, and how we understand them now? One way seeing the organizational reality is as something that can be objectively measured, analyzed, and understood from outside. So this may be traditional, this kind of consultant view, that consultants have certain tools and collect data from organization, then create a report and tell, okay, this is now the how this particular organization is like. And that can be in some cases quite valid, but it's never the whole picture. As researcher, we can also do, there's a lot of research in organizations that try to measure organizations objectively, or just kind of from outside, and analyze it through certain data. And again, that's one view. But I would argue, and we could argue that that's never the whole picture. Other paradigm, what we can call more constructivist paradigm, is that we can see organization something that is socially constructed and maintained through mutual meaning making within, so that we are partakers, we are involved, we are not outsiders, and we are making things together, talking about what's the nature of the organization. But while talking about that, we can still again make the organization reality as such. So it's not just describing, but it's also constructing the organizational reality. Or could it be both and? And one thing is that we can have multiple ways of analyzing the data and making sense of the organization. And when there's a richer way of doing that, then we can have more. It's tend to be more fruitful. But when we talk about now helping change, it's pretty much the latter part, which is more important, I guess, or I would argue, and that we see organization socially constructed. Well, then some other aspects. So how we sense organizational reality is through experience. So it's pretty much experiential stuff. Because we then interact with people, we ask, we reason, we discuss, we communicate, we act together, and so all that is experiential. But then we try, our mind tend to make sense out of that what happened, why it happened, and that we can call this kind of meaning making. And more important even is that do we have a certain kind of reflection if we want to make sense better or understand better that something new happened, and then this kind of reflective practice is important. And that through that we can talk about learning. And when we are in changing reality, it's about learning as well. So I would like to argue that it's a learning mechanism that make us to learn new things, learn new views, learn new ways of doing stuff. And it means that we need to have experiences, we have to make sense out of that, reflect on, and that can lead to new understanding and new habits, new practices, and new ways of work. Other aspect is contextuality. So meaning that each organization is unique in that sense, that things happens within the organization between people and they start making sense together, and it's different than in neighboring organization. And this contextual is built through language and meanings, so that language and meanings tend to be unique in organization. Many of you have worked in different organizations, have noticed that the same words can mean different things in different contexts. Even in neighboring teams can have a little bit different language. And that's very fundamental stuff, that how we talk, how we give meanings, and what's the language like, because through language we also create the reality. Then things happens through relations, that we are making meanings in our relations, we are acting with other people, we are experiencing things in true relations. And any interaction is not just one time, because it happens as a kind of continuum within relations, and those relations are built through these interactions. And that creates certain kind of processuality, that there's always, the context have always history, and it's that we're living within the organization towards future, and this kind of unfolding in a way. But this kind of processuality is also a view that things are not just one-timers, or they are not, and things are also connected. So this kind of systemic view, which pretty much happens through our different kind of practices which we have built. So we have routinized ways of doing stuff in organization, and this means that just looking at these practices and changing those practices are quite pivotal. It's not just changing our knowing, but it's changing how we do stuff, and that tend to be quite routinized. And all in all, also all this, how we do stuff, what are our basic beliefs, we can call that builds our mutual culture. And the culture is tend to be quite unconscious as well, and that's why it makes the change sometimes quite difficult. And when we talk about the culture and practices, they tend to have this kind of recursive nature. So when we act, we produce our culture while acting in a way that is manifesting our culture, but at the same time, our beliefs, what's the right way of doing things, is produced by the culture. So we produce culture, and it really produces us. And as said already, that culture and practice tend to become deeply routinized and implicit, which makes organizational change quite challenging. And finally, what could be the further question if we take this seriously? So because our ways to see the world frame our agency and understanding, so are we scrutinizing our lenses and basic assumption critically enough? So being aware, how do we see, is the valid way of seeing things, and what could be the alternatives or other ways to see? And are we curious about that? And then, while our practice and cultural beliefs are strongly routinized and part of our identities even, can we let us experience, explore, and exercise new practice in a safe and useful way? So meaning that we can curious that, okay, hey, we are used to do it this way. Could we try something else? So this kind of experiential and experimenting culture. And then we are more relational, independent, interdependent beings than we believe. So we are not so separate. And so one core question is that how can we take issues of inclusion, participation, and need of competency seriously in general, but especially in change situations, so that we are accountable to others, and we are accountable together, that how we are collectively be a good organization, and really make things happen together. So this was quite quick it's kind of looking at the lenses and some basic thoughts about those. But I guess now it's time for our 5 minute break, right?
So next, so that was about the lenses. So keep in mind this concept of different lenses and what that we need to look at things from different contexts and the whole contextuality, because that's going to be popping up later in this course, the kind of the fundamentals that Jari just went through. And next, I'm going to talk about uncertainty. But also, it was interesting while, to be honest, Jari, I was listening to you, but I was also looking at the chat as well, and so what people did answer. And there's, yeah, a lot of variety of motivations, but definitely a lot of things people want to learn about change, but the whole diversity comes from different backgrounds. Some of you are students, some of you are professionals, and I'm sure there's enormous amounts of experience about these topics when we put together what you have already done in your professional lives, whether you are young or old. But whatever is your background, it's my segue to the next theme is this uncertainty. And unfortunately, or I don't know whether it's fortunate or not, but we live in a world where uncertainty is everyday things. And for organization, what I'm trying to argue is this is kind of a fundamental change when it comes to managing business and organizations. And here's my kind of take on this, that if the world for many organizations looks like this, that there maybe used to be a road that was clear ahead, now there's definitely this fog in the past 2 decades, at least, that has been coming. And because of that, these things seem to be bursting at the seams. And I'm going to kind of go through them one by one. I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list of what things are going on, but these are kind of the typical things that where is this uncertainty about leadership, about organizations, about things that what's wrong with our current way of thinking in a way. And in addition to these kind of things in the black color, these kind of big things I'm going to go over, there's these new things coming. I'm just adding that if you are in any position to plan ahead, you kind of feel in your bones that the old ways of working are not working. And in addition, there's like this extra fog because, things are popping up, the whole digitalization, or now the AI and chat GPTs and everything is just causing more uncertainty, more fog into our planning, into our leadership, into us doing things, and so forth. So uncertainty in I don't think there's any organization at the moment who doesn't have to tackle with uncertainty quite a lot. And they, like we mentioned, the COVID, which was 6 years ago, that was for many organizations really that was a global reality check, that how well can your own organization deal when the fog really hits globally, that your plans go out of the window, when you really cannot predict what's going to happen in the next few weeks. And now, of course, kind of in the past years, we've got the kind of the global economy doing whatever it is, supply chains and inflation, and all of these things are causing uncertainties in many, many domains. And as we well know today, the global politics is something that is not just something that happens, but it's actually creeping into your organization. Your organization is seeing the effects of the uncertainty of the global politics. So the basic question, and I'm pretty sure you more or less agree, is that from a leadership perspective, it is this question, how do I lead into the fog? Because I don't think that your organization has the option of just waiting for the fog to go away, because it probably is not, because it has not gone away for the past 20 years. Why would it go away by tomorrow? But the question is, you need to go forward where you cannot predict. And let's see, kind of go one by one, those things I had, kind of where is the traditional way of thinking bursting at the seams? And I think it's important to understand kind of like where are the root causes for much of the uncertainty when it comes to organization. And the first is just the fact that the traditional management principles, and this is kind of obvious now in the year 26, that if you took your business school teaching in the 1980s or 1990s, things have radically changed. But this might be the fact in many organizations, that the people on the top level of leadership got their fundamental education, their kind of definitive business education let's say in the 1990s. And they were maybe taught that this is how you organize, this is how you lead. The whole point of organization is to just to clarify a roadmap that you can follow for 5 to 10 years. But now the roadmap has this fog and it really doesn't work like that. And to kind of put it bluntly, I'm saying that we have the previous century, the 20th century, we had this kind of dominant way of thinking that management is all about predictability. That good leadership, good management is that you kind of clarify the road ahead. You give numbers to your boss saying that these are the next numbers in the next quarter, in the next year. And your boss would be happy because those numbers give predictability. And they could give the numbers up to the next level, and maybe, in a public company, you would publish your numbers for your predictions for the next quarter. And the whole organization was kind of built to help this predictability engine to good quality numbers, to put it bluntly. And in that way, we got organizations like this. So this is IBM from 1930s, where if the whole point is that you're kind of giving predictability to your bosses and the next level, and things remain stable. We got marketing and we got sales and we got, the systems department. And yes, there are changes, but each department handles them again. And then you get these hierarchical organizations. And from this picture, you can kind of nicely see that if you try to go sideways, if you try to kind of break those silos, if you will, it becomes very difficult because maybe you're in a different country. You cannot talk to these people because you never meet them because they're too far away in a different building. There's a physical wall between you. So that's kind of the basic, that the traditional management principles of running hierarchical organizations have changed. And the fact might be that you are still in an established organization that was built 100 years ago, but you still have those structures, although the principles have changed. And that's where a lot of people kind of get the pain that, we want to be agile, but our structures don't help us. The other obvious thing that's happening, of course, is that the technological change is just fast. And I think we can pretty much say that this is the most rapid technological change ever as humanity. Things have not changed at this speed, thank you to the internet, because now information goes back and forth and you have a global market. So it's just supercharged over and over again how fast things go. And AI in the past 2-3 years has been a perfect example that, nowadays everybody understands that it's just useless to predict technological change too far because it just changes so fast. And the thing that has kind of, because this has become a reality now, is that it puts the pressure into things, the speed of innovation. So if you think about an organization that its kind of forefront is the products or the services that it creates for its customers, the faster you innovate those products and services, the faster you react to the changing world. And that's why, typically organizations, we have pressure to innovate fast, fast time to market and new products and new things need to come and continuously changing digital services. And that's kind of, you can see this is a reaction to the constant change, because if things are changing, then we need to change. And where do we change? We change where our products and services meet our customers. But then again, you might feel as a leader or a manager or whatever person in the middle of that change is this kind of whack-a-mole game, that the change just happens way too fast. Things keep on popping up and you try to react to them. And, I need to deal with this fire and I need to deal with this fire and this fire and this fire and this fire. And we're kind of losing this piece to start planning things, to kind of look at the big pictures, to look into the horizon, because we are just overwhelmed with operational firefighting at the moment. I don't know, does it feel like a whack-a-mole game in your job or not? Quick question, do you know what is the sad thing about that game in that picture, whack-a-mole game? Anybody in the chat? What is the sad thing about that game? No more moles? Oh, is that sad, Veli-Matti? Yeah. Hey, Veli-Matti Vikman, I know you. And nice to see you there. You lose. Yes. Johanna, that's actually, and Rosemary and others, that's the point. Whack-a-mole game is rigged so that you never win. The moles become faster and faster, and at the end of the day, you win. That's very sad. So let's not hope this is a total metaphor of your current leadership situation. Let's hope there's a possibility to win. But again, back to COVID, I think because COVID was, again, the good thing about the COVID was that you can look back and see how good were you at change when really a global big change happens? How fast did you react? And I put a couple of pictures here, and we still remember kind of like how fast grocery stores were able to start delivering food. Or like there's a brewery over there that started making a hand sanitizer, or the whole delivery business just suddenly it just happened because some organizations were really good at change and adapting. And the whole vaccination was pretty much a miracle that how fast it happened. And we were able to change the whole society organization that we get vaccinated. So you can kind of look back at your own job, or maybe you're in a different job now, but what actually worked really well? What kind of things made you fast in your change? What maybe after you made those changes, such as like this, what we're doing right now, is a perfect example. Everybody suddenly got very used to online lectures. If you think like year 2015, people would go, no, online lectures, that's totally impossible. It's so boring and so, whatnot. But suddenly now there was kind of a collective change, and this is a good thing that happened in a way, that we very quickly learned to communicate and interact online, and has its benefits, has its downsides as well. Next point about the fog. We still have part of the problem of the fog is that we have some legacy structures, some things that don't change. And kind of, the basic good old question, what's slowing down big organizations? Especially if you're a big established organization, why is it so difficult to change? Anything in the chat? Anybody want to give their views? Why big organizations just don't go and change? What's holding them back? Pow pow. Legacy. Yeah. Legacy what? Fear of unknown. That's a good one. Hierarchies. Yeah, that's a structure. Culture. That's a great one. Resistance. Personal resistance, maybe. Routines, people, thinking, fear. Yeah. Difficulty to understand each other. I think that was, hey, that's Riikka. Excellent answer. No, not a surprise. Power relations, inertia. Big ships turn slow. Exactly, Johanna. Question is, why do they turn slow? Hey, that's good. Nice. You guys are on fire there. Here's kind of my list. Probably doesn't surprise anybody again. But, this list is it has probably some good stuff, because I think sometimes some legacy is good. So it's kind of like the one in the below where it says, we have 10,000 employees to care about. I think that's maybe a good thing, slowing change. Or not all change is good, or maybe the change is good, but the implications might be negative. And I think that's kind of like now with the AI discussions about employment again is, yeah, how fast can you change? And maybe something should stop you changing too fast. But anyway, basically, it's legacy IT, that's a typical culprit. Organizational silos. Things are still good. Why change? Things look good. Top-down leadership, physical assets. I mean, if you're in an organization or company that has factories, or, you have maybe a fleet of ships, it's not just like you can throw them away. You still need to do something with them. Lack of competence, maybe. People don't know what to do next. I think that's a very common nowadays. Existing contracts. So, for example, maybe you work for an insurance company and has these contracts with its customers. I mean, you can't throw them away. You need to live with them. Okay, I can see the chat still going on. Turbocharge. Attention span, that's a good one. Thank you. People feel more comfortable with less change. That's Diana. That's absolutely right. And I think we're going to come back to that because I think that's kind of the key, that how do you do change, but still don't cause panic or let people feel safe, people feel creative, that some things are stable, but some things are changing. That's maybe one of the big leadership challenges nowadays when it comes to change. And then next one is the customers. They change. Whether it's customer, whether it's users, whether it's stakeholders, whoever we are serving in our organizations. They live on the same planet. Their world is changing at the same time. So, their expectations towards you are changing as you're trying to change yourself as well. So changing all the time. And now you can see why the fog is pretty thick. And I put this example here. Many of you are students here, and is here on the left-hand side, we have the registration system here at Aalto University, at how do you register to courses. And to be honest, it's not perfect. It's actually sometimes not good at all. And at the same time, I would imagine if you're a university student, you're using something like Volt over here, that you can actually choose a restaurant and in 20 minutes you will have their food delivered at your door. Now that's an extremely complex thing to do, but somehow somebody has actually managed to create that thing. And now you're kind of, if your expectation levels is that I can choose a restaurant and that food will be delivered to my home, why is signing up to courses so difficult? So that's kind of we live on this planet where we have examples that things can be done very differently. And that's pushing a lot of expectations for us as organizations to match those expectations as well. And then let's not, overlook the biggest pressure to change. And that's, of course, what I'm talking is the climate change. Especially when it comes to businesses, our current way of doing business, about thinking how organizations work, especially in businesses, it's not sustainable anymore. Because the fundamental philosophy is that, we're just constantly growing and growing and growing. And that growth is pretty much based on eternal resources of the planet. And now we know that's not true. That's not going to happen. So this is probably, or maybe if I can say, this should be the biggest driving change at the moment for organizations. But one more thing, especially from a business management perspective, I want to add here. And this is kind of a simplification of what I see, and have been training these things for almost now 15 years now, is when it comes to leadership thinking and organization, this little story of mine probably sheds a light of what is the global change that is happening. And here I have this in example. We have this we have this company who's making these blenders, a physical product where you can blend your fruits and create a smoothie. Great. And I'm seeing that this has happened in the past decades quite a lot. But we have a product like the blender. And, we have the users and they use the product. And now what has happened is that there's been more and more pressure, especially let's say that, suddenly there's a faraway country that is producing blenders much more efficiently at a cheaper cost with the same quality. So you kind of, as a traditional blender manufacturer, you go like, okay, how can it be more valuable to my customers? Not just these physical products, but how can I be more valuable? And then, in the past like 10, 15 years, we started talking about, well, there's the customer experience. It's not just about buying those blenders, but what's their experience? How do they feel about it? What's the breakfast experience they're creating with our products and so forth? And many, many businesses in the past decade have become service businesses. And digital plays a huge part, because once digitalization comes, then you are kind of automatically more in a service business than you were traditionally in a physical product business. And now the question is, can we run a service business in an organization that has been doing physical products? And that's a pain point still for many, many companies. And then you start kind of like, well, the next is, we start building these customer relationships because we have now learned that, digital products, they're constantly changing. They come and go. So it's actually the kind of the company brand, it's us. It's not just about the blender or the app that was connected to the blender, but it's, people, how can we part of our company brand is part of their everyday life and well-being. And so it becomes very abstract. And then the next question has been in the past years that, okay, if we look at the whole company and the society we live in, or even the planet we live in, are we honestly creating a positive impact on society? So the kind of the societal role comes here. So what I'm saying with this picture is that, there's this kind of trend that we're going from traditional business management has been not all, but pretty much dominated by this, how do we physical product management. Even the word tuotantotalous for us has this kind of built in. And this has been gradually changing to service businesses and now kind of more like building these customer relationships and now to this kind of understanding what's our role in society. And I just put this big word of change because many companies, one way of looking, where is your organization here on this simplified path? And what are the things that you are struggling with? So to summarize the fog picture, and you can bet that we're going to show that fog picture a couple of times still in this course, is that we have these kind of big things, need for speed, technological innovation, from products to services. These are the big themes. There might be probably some more, but these are one of the things where our way of thinking about leadership and organizations is bursting at the seams. There is this pressure. And for many people, it's feeling, this is not the right way to think about it. So what do you do? So definitely help is wanted. But is this then? I mean, it's not 2026. Is this totally new? Is this new under the sun? We have never in humanity been in this situation. Well, I guess kind of the good news is that no, this is not new. Businesses and academic literature about change has been tackling with this problem for decades. You could say, since the Second World War, the people, I think change in organization is as old as humanity. But kind of the more systematic and academic approach to this is also quite old when you look at the literature. Because handling strategic uncertainty is actually quite well known and studied, and we're going to use some examples of that later on. But I'm going to kind of now, the next thing before wrapping up for today is that kind of looking back that, hey, companies and our thinking and our discussions have actually reacted to this. If this has been going on for 20 years, then of course things have reacted. And I'm calling these kind of awakenings in the business world when change is imminent. And the first awakening I'm going to go over, and I'm kind of hoping that this is obvious to you by now, is that when it comes to digital and digitalization, which has been going on for at least 20 years, we have now woken up to the fact that digital is actually a way of working. Digital is not just about the technology. It's a way of working. And I mean this, that if you take stuff that has been there and is still quite relevant, data analysis, software, artificial intelligence, information technology in general, if you look at how they have been introduced to organizations, they have actually changed how we work, the way of working quite a lot. Maybe this was not obvious 20 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. We just thought that let's digitalize this and everything else remains the same. But now we kind of know that no, that's not true. And the fact is that, we could have asked any social scientist, what is technology? And they would have told us that, technology has never been about technology. The technology is about actions, what do humans do, how people behave, what kind of practices we have, routines, habits. Technology is just a passive thing unless somebody does something with it. And that's why technology is always kind of bound into our human activity. As an engineer myself, I like to say that technology is the most human thing on the planet, because technology doesn't exist without humans. We could take like my mouse over here, and if there were 0 human beings, then this would not be a mouse. This would be a bundle of plastic and electronics. So kind of summarize, the technology is a way of working. So it means, and this should be obvious, if you introduce new technology, you introduce new ways of working. Duh. And the bigger the technological transformation, then of course bigger the culture change. And I kind of highlighted the word, the letters A and I there, because now we are in the middle of an enormous technological transformation. So I think people have pretty much know that it's actually a huge culture change that we're going through, not just a technology change. Good, that was only one. Second awakening, organization's own culture seems to be the key for change, meaning that it's not enough to change a little bit here or change there or hire new people. It's a more holistic change. And the word culture has been used quite a lot. And it kind of implies that we have this old culture we need to get rid of. Again, I'm simplifying a little bit. And in this old culture, we have top-down control, we have processes, rigid structures, chains of commands, and strong silos. And it seems that these are not necessarily working currently. But kind of given, they're not necessarily evil, that they have a history where they come from. So if we take like one of the dominant philosophies of business management, Taylor's principles of science management, that's where the word Taylorism comes from. The thinking was that organizations are like scientific machines. That, the hierarchy we build in an organization, that's a taxonomy of functions: marketing, sales, engineering, leadership. And bureaucracy, well, that's, causalities and rules. When engineering comes out with a new product, it changes marketing like this, and then it implies sales like this. And why not make those into rules, which gives you kind of bureaucracy? And this implies kind of that we have top-down control. If organization is like a machine, then the leader is an observer outside the machine, trying to make the machine work quite a lot. And it's this fundamental thinking that management is like a science, that we just need to find the correct theory. Let's study this more. One day we will understand what's the theory for our workplace, and then everything will fall into place. But of course, this is not actually true, and even less true in nowadays. And that's why in the past 10, 15 years, a lot of people at organizations like, hey, there's a new way of working. There's a new culture somewhere in the horizon, bought by the whole software and digitalization, because software work culture is quite different from traditional. And you could call this lean or responsive or agile new culture, but the point being that it has these kind of fundamentals, this new culture that is more adaptable and more agile and better fit for our world. And the principles are that grassroots take responsibility. The people who are at the customer interface, they get more responsibility to make decisions. And if we want them to make decisions, we need to give them decision-making power. So you need to change power structures in your organization, that people at grassroots can make decisions. And if they can make decisions, they better make good decisions. So how do they make good decisions? Well, yeah, they need all the information possible to make good decisions. And that's how we get slogans like transparency of information. People need to access information and data and decisions so they can make their own decisions with good quality thinking. And the fourth point, that the focus is not so much about what are we doing this by the book. Is this the correct process? Is this the way that we have always done, and now we should do it the same way? No, the focus is much, much more on the end result. Kind of saying like, hey, if I'm your boss, I'm like, don't break the law and be kind to each other, but otherwise you do this the way you see best. I'm not going to give you any process. You figure it out. But the end result is this. We need to increase this by 5%. That kind of thinking. And then last but definitely not least is that this is actually very taxing on the individual, because you're asking the individual to do a lot more than in a traditional setting. You're asking the individual person to plan their own work, understand their own context, get all the information, do all that work once they have planned, reflect on their work. So it's actually very, very high level stuff asking for the individual brains to do. And that's why this works only if people are happy, if they're creative, and if they're talented. And that's probably, I would say, one of the reasons why, psychological well-being has become a big trend in the past decade, that workplaces should start paying much, much more attention to mental well-being. That was 3. I have 2 more to go. So if culture is the key, then actually it's the culture of doing things. That we cannot change our company and organization culture just by giving PowerPoints. And this goes way back to lean manufacturing, to Japanese car manufacturing in 1970s. Now there's one thing I'm going to pick from there that is relevant still today. So of course, if those of you who don't know or have forgotten the big kind of the story of Japanese car manufacturing and Toyota, was that in 1970s they created this like work culture which produced high quality cars that were less expensive than American cars. So the American car manufacturers got concerned and they started to figure out and understand how does the Japanese car manufacturing culture work. And one of the stories, and I have a link in the notes later on this slide set about you can listen to the podcast and look at this, is a story of John Shook, who was sent to Toyota to study this. How do they do? How can they create and produce cars that are higher quality and less expensive? And the thing I told you, I'm going to pick one thing from this, is that this is John Shook's diagram. And he learned that they have a very different approach when it comes to company culture. That if the old model was that the big bosses decide that this is the company culture, which means these are the company values, and then they would tell people, these are the company values, now just, work. For those of you who know Toyota Lean and those stories, or maybe you have some kind of a black belt in Six Sigma or something like that, you know that this is kind of twisted and, other way around. So the Toyota philosophy, to put it shortly, was that no, we actually go there on the factory floor. The leaders would go there and together with the people assembling those cars start kind of telling them, hey, this is what we're trying to achieve, but how can you make your job better? So kind of, going to the grassroots and letting them decide how do they make their own sphere of influence better. So they would go there where people do things and start changing that. And that would kind of create the values from the actions, from the people themselves, and that would create the culture. So they would change behavior to change people's thinking. That was the big thing. And that's kind of sounds obvious because nowadays this is pretty much how we think about company culture, especially if you work for a very digital or software company. So to put it together, kind of if we live in uncertainty, it looks like, obviously you can't plan it. So you need to build some kind of a responsive culture, not the whack-a-mole, but a healthy version of it. Culture, what do you mean by culture? Culture of doing. This is what John Shook taught us. Doing, so you go and change the routines. You go and change the tools, how people do things, and explain them why you are changing these things. And routines and tools, well, actually, in the past 15 years, we have been having quite a lot of design tools or agile routines and lean startup and entrepreneurship and all of these lovely things. And I'm sure you're mostly familiar with this. But if you put it into this context, it maybe starts making sense that, wow, so these are all about changing our ways of working. Yes, they are. And once you change your ways of working with these tools, you start changing your ways of thinking. And those of you who have used any of these tools, you know quite well that these are collective tools. These are not for individual people. You do them in a team. You do them in a group. So you're actually creating collective experience, is you're creating collective knowledge, collective thinking. And that's, of course, is the source of change for cultures. So if we put it into this diagram, you can see that we have uncertainty here, and you try to find a competitive advantage in that uncertainty. So the kind of the predominant logic of how this works goes like, uncertainty need a responsive culture. Culture, what do you mean culture? Culture of doing. So what is doing in a workplace? Well, it's routines. It's the tools. It's the practices that you do. People come to work every Monday. What do they literally do? What kind of tools they use? When they get together, is there like some kind of a weekly, some kind of a routine? And it boils down to these things, which are almost like concrete artifacts. Weeklies, tools, roadmaps, templates, design canvases, retrospectives, workshops, kanbans. And once you kind of introduce these things, you can start shaping people's behavior, actions. And like I said, when people do these things together, it starts shaping their thinking. And now suddenly people are thinking collectively. And of course, that is the seed to this holy grail of nowadays, that kind of you have these responsive autonomous organizations where the boss doesn't have to micromanage anymore, that they can react to these changes. And like I started with, you can suddenly feel more confident driving into the fog. And the way to do this change in this thinking is you start kind of small. You introduce artifacts that people accept, make their own, and that's the way of creating collective thinking. So to kind of put it into one picture is that, hey, this is why we have a lot of canvases and routines to address uncertainty. Why has the business model canvas been so popular? Why have, canvases and Kanban boards and everything, are just coming to the workplace? In a way, it's because they are the key to address the uncertainty. Because you cannot plan the future, your focus goes at, are our ways of working aligned, but at the same time kind of very agile for change. And that brings us to the point that why change and change leadership, the action and the doing are critical. It's not book knowledge. You can tell people the theory of being an agile organization, but that doesn't help you. People need to do things. They need to action. And what Jari talked about, the kind of the whole experientility of it. People need to experience what it means. So it kind of almost becomes like a bodily knowledge. How do we do weeklies? How do we do retrospectives? What is the customer insights? It becomes an actionable thing. Hands dirty. And that's kind of what, in the John Shook model was that you change behavior to change people's thinking. You get people's hands dirty and you together with them start changing behavior. And then just like in that picture, you suddenly in springtime, flowers coming out and you have changed things into more responsive culture. Good. That was my mini lecture about change. I noticed that there were a couple of comments. When do we get our hands dirty here? Well, I can't see your hands, Rika, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to get hands into the dirt, which is the homework that is coming next. And this is called the context onion. I will go through this. And the whole point of the homework is that you try to figure out what's the big picture. So everybody's going to get a pair, and your job is to help together with the pair figure out what is the pair's big picture. So the pair has a project. So can you paint the big picture? Okay, deadline by Monday, because after Monday, we have one day, Tuesday, to go over your exercises and see what happened. But that's going to come later. I'm going to now explain the exercise. And why it's called an onion is because I'm using this picture, this image, this kind of onion thing. So here in the middle of the onion, you have what does your team do? Your everyday work, your area of responsibility. But you kind of see that things that why are you doing what you are doing come from the outside world. The outside world shapes what your company does, that shapes how you're organized, shapes what the company does for work, and part of that work is done by your team, by that project. And just highlighting that text, working in uncertainty is all about understanding the context. The better you understand the context, the more comfortably you can drive into the fog. And that's why we do the exercise. And this onion picture also means that whatever you're doing, there's always a larger context. Yeah, duh, kind of obvious. But why you can, need to understand it. You have your own individual, you're part of the team is part of the organization is part of the company. The onion thinking here. But here's the key. Your success is always defined by the next layer of the onion. Your individual success is defined by the team. Your team's success is defined by the organization. And the organization's success by the company, and the success of your company is kind of defined by the market. So that's one way of thinking. Your success, if you want to do your job really well, you cannot do that in a sealed container. You're successful if you contribute positively to the next layer of the onion. So what's the impact that you're creating in the next layer of the onion? So let's have an example here. Let's say that you are given a task that introduce design thinking into the workplace. Good. So let's say you're an UX, or there's a UX designer. Now they have been hired to this team. And the UX designer says that, hey, can you teach me design thinking? And you, as the design facilitator, go like, yeah, sure, I'll coach you. And then the UX designer learns the tools, thinking, and the skills. Great. But then they come back after a month and they go like, oh my God, I know design thinking, but nobody in my team gets it. I cannot contribute this brilliant thing because it doesn't just fit the next level. And then you go like, okay, sure, I'll coach the whole team. And then you coach the whole team. And then the team learns everything. And then after a month, they go like, the UX designer comes back. It's the bare boss doesn't really get it. And the whole governance model of our company just kills everything we have just learned. It doesn't fit the organization or our decision-making principles. So the UX designer goes like, oh, can you teach all the teams and our directors? Then you go like, sure, I'll coach them. And then you coach the teams, the directors, the PMO learns the tools, and the governance model changes and so forth. And then you go like, after a month, the next level is that, it doesn't really help because our whole company strategy is still thinking that we work in a traditional way. That, the top management doesn't get it. And this is now. And I'm sure many of you have maybe felt something like this in the past decades as our companies have changed. So the point kind of being that, yeah, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to actually change things, it becomes this huge collective exercise. And one key in that, and that's the point of the homework, is that you need to understand the context where you're working if you really want to change. And this onion maybe gives some ideas that we have different roles at different levels of an organization. If you're just facilitating one person, then maybe you're like a mentor. If you're facilitating a whole team, you're kind of like a facilitator coach. If you're facilitating a whole organization, then maybe you're like a change agent, or maybe you are the big boss of a big organization. Then you are a change leader in a way. So these different titles imply different levels in the organization as well. And this is the whole point, understanding the larger context. Remember this slogan from Harvard business professor that people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. Can you take your own project and understand the broader picture? Where does it fit in? What is the actual relevant context where it has to fit in? And that's the point of the exercise. And once you start clarifying that context for you, you start making the success criteria more visible. You can start understanding what is your role in the bigger whole. You engage other people, especially the decision makers, because you understand to make this happen is not enough that we talk inside our team. And suddenly, once you understand the bigger, you become more strategic. You might get more inspired about your work. It becomes meaningful for other people as well. Maybe you become more motivated because you can now finally see that, hey, I have a role to play in this bigger picture. And then your work is not about delivering outputs, but suddenly you also can start talking about what are the impacts, what is the change that we're doing, and so forth. So that's your exercise. Draw the context onion of your pair's work. Now just stating the obvious here, you're drawing the other person's work. You're not drawing your own work. The person is asking you questions. Okay, tell me about the context, and they are drawing that picture. And that's why it's a pair exercise. You are the one that the other person is asking questions and also facilitating for you to explain about your own work context. So here in the left-hand side, you have your helping questions. What is your pair's current project? What is the organization they do the project for? And then you draw the onion, then you switch roles, and so forth. And the key, of course, is that once you're drawing that other person's context, you need to understand what you are doing. And for you to understand, you need to ask the other person questions. And suddenly we're in a quite nice interaction, facilitated environment. Remember to leave some time in the end to reflect. We are not so much interested in the onions that you draw. We're much more interested in this last part of the exercise. What did you learn? Was it difficult? Was it beneficial? Where it didn't fit? Why was it difficult to apply? And so forth. You can return these via PDF, return the onions, yes, but return also the reflections. And you're going to get a Google form where to do that. You'll get the links and the emails once you get your pairs. People typically ask, does it matter what the project is? Well, yes and no. I mean, you can take an old project that you have done previously. You can definitely take a project you're working at the moment. But once you kind of understand the point of the exercise, choose something that is beneficial for you and just see how it goes. Still 5 minutes to go. Couple of things to keep in mind. You get the slides. Remember, the onion is a simplification. So actually the meta exercise here for you is to cut corners. When you're explaining your work context or project context to the other person, you need to make decisions what to leave in and what to leave out. We'll get back to that next one. And remember to make the pair work, be active. Once you get the email of your pair, contact them, especially if you have calendar problems, i.e. you need to find time next week to do this, or preferably actually this week. You should get these by tomorrow. If you're passive, then by Monday, we will give your pair another one. But please don't be passive, or if you know that you have scheduling problems, then again, contact your pair, contact us. But don't panic. All will be fine. We have been running this course for years. We know what to do. So don't stress. Okay, that's it. Don't leave yet. I have a summary here. I'm not going to read it, but just for your slides, or maybe you copy paste this to your AI partner to figure out what you have learned. So that's in a summary. Further readings, I promised. Interesting things to check out. The Nummi stuff is the John Shook stuff. Both the lecture slides and the video recording of this lecture will be available for you. And especially those who missed the lecture, they can check it out from there. Here's your checklist. Register your attendance. Remember, there's a little slot where you can give feedback to Jari and myself about this lecture. Then, use it. Readings, slides, recording. We will send you links by email tomorrow. Jaakko and Katri will send you an email for your pair and the exercise tomorrow, the latest. Any questions, hang around online or email facilitating change or facilitating a talk. Jari, anything you want to add? Final
Well,
words?
sounds very good. And just nice to have you on board still, and take care of your pair. And on my behalf, yes, see you next week. But enjoy the exercise.
Absolutely. We will see you in a week. That will be almost the end of April.